July 10, 2023. This is the S&P 500 E-Futures Mini on the NinjaTrader 8 platform, 2000 tick chart. This is what the charts look like today. I drew the highs and the lows. You can look down in the descriptions below to see where I thought I saw setups as well as where I took my trades. I took a total of 2 trades today, and they were both green. The first trade, I looked back on it in hindsight, it shouldn't have been taken. It was just lucky that it turned out green for me. But in hindsight, after I reviewed it, I don't think it was actually a very good trade to have taken. It was a little bit too aggressive, just anticipating something when the setup clearly wasn't formed yet. I'll get to that in a bit. So this is the pre-market highs and the lows. It looked like it had 2 clean legs up, and at the time I thought it would just be in this trading range, but overall it just kind of floated to the higher side of this trading range, and the price action was a little slow today. There was no real economic news that came out to really move the markets. So let's just go ahead and go into the trades right now. So this is what the pre-market looks like. The pre-market, I don't really trade the pre-market just because I'm not awake usually. This is Pacific Standard Time. You did see a sell-off. You saw 2 legs up, and it looks like it was coming back down. Then the market opened. So you do have a new low here, first entry short. You technically have a second entry short, but I don't like the looks of this right now. It just doesn't look very clean. I do draw this ascending channel going up. It comes up, it breaks out, and it breaks out of this short and fin channel coming down. Makes an attempt to go higher. Then it comes back down. I'm wondering if it's going to try to make a second attempt. It looks like it is. It makes a second attempt, actually makes a new high. Comes down, it bounces off the EMA. Technically, you have a new low here, first entry short, second entry short, but you could also see this as 1 leg up, pull back, second leg up, and technically you could see it as a second entry short here on the visual. I didn't want to count it that way. I just want something a little cleaner, so I didn't take a trade. Press to continue moving. It looks like it's having resistance right up here at around 44, 41. Well, 41, 40, 44, 42. Breaks down below, and I actually established this trading range up here originally, and I treated this as an overshoot. Came up, it is respecting the top side, but when it comes back down, that's when I drag this part of my range back down to try to accommodate and capture both of these 2 lows, because you have 2 confirmations. Technically, you can see it as a triple test here. Press to continue moving. So now you do have a clean triple test here, except I'm not too sure that I want to take any of these trades that I see or setups. Press to continue moving up. It breaks down, and now it looks like there's kind of a slight slope. There's a bearish bias because it's making lower highs every time and slightly lower lows. Prices move up, and now it breaks out to the top side. It's an overshoot here. So this is actually the first trade that I take, and I'll explain my reasoning I saw at the time. And in hindsight, I realized this isn't really a clean setup because I anticipated something happening, which isn't a clean way to trade. It's also very risky. So what I saw actually here was a new low, clearly a new low, first entry short. As it moves up, it's respecting this channel going up. It makes a breakout, so it actually makes 1 push up, comes back up, and makes a second push down. So I actually counted this as a first entry short, and I count this as a second entry short that fails. But I really shouldn't have taken that as a second entry short. This is actually a no real setup here. Yes, you could look at different time frames and convince yourself it's a failed second entry short. And I think I looked at it as a first push down, comes up, makes a second push down, it fails and goes up. The reason I took this trade for long is I saw that, okay, there's probably a move to test this recent high, but this is already a breakout of this trading range, which I was playing with. So this is actually a risky trade to have taken to go long or short because you don't have enough information to know if this price is actually coming through, because it could be treated as overshoot and come back down and touch this other side, or it could actually be a correction, 1 move up, break, and it could try to make an attempt to test this new high and make another leg up. But I didn't know that at the time, and I assumed it was just going to test the highs here, which isn't a good assumption. Turns out I was lucky and I was able to scalp out here. But as you can see, if I try to go for more than just 1 point, it probably would have stopped me out. Probably, depending on where I put my stop, it could have stopped me out down here. If I kept it 1 tick below this guy, it would have stopped me on this green candle. But I was lucky on this trade. I recognize that and also know that this isn't a trade I should repeat or take. As I continue moving down, I see a triple with micro top here, micro triple top here. First entry long comes back, breaks through. You see one leg pulls back and a potential second leg, but you also have first entry long, second entry long. Now, when this one ended, I was tempted to take a trade here, but it kind of didn't break above. It just kind of matched the highs. And it's also technically an inside candle, so I didn't really feel super confident that it was going to move back up yet. If this candle, this red candle wasn't so big, then I might have considered taking a trade because it took a lot of strength for the bulls to push this price all the way back up, taking back pretty much this entire move. And I wasn't sure there was enough left to kind of keep going up because the first entry long, second entry long could easily be a second entry long failure. Technically, a second entry long hasn't formed yet. Now this is a second entry long, but I was thinking if I put my trade entry here, I definitely wouldn't have gotten filled. But I do see a higher low here. This higher low, I actually did try to take because I saw it was first entry long, second entry long, and it came back, bounced off the EMA, closed relatively bullish. So even though there's a bear candle, it bounced off the EMA. I thought there was enough room to scalp out to this recent high here because it's shown that it can break through this high resistance right here when it pushed up to here. So I thought there might have been trade here. So when this one formed, I actually dropped my entry right where this triple test was, or this triple top here. Actually, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 candles all hitting the same point, and even one back here. When this flashed up, I actually dropped my entry one tick here. Unfortunately, it just kind of danced above it and never came back to fill me. So when this one formed, actually when this one went up to here and it actually spiked up first, I canceled my order because I thought the trade would have been made already. If I hung around too long, it would have filled me either on this candle or this candle and would have stopped me out most likely. Prices continue moving down. So now I'm just kind of looking at the big picture. Right now, it looks like it's just in a trading range and it's kind of pushing on the top side of the trading range, but nothing to convince me to take a trade yet. I do see a new low here, first entry short, second entry short. The second entry short is a good signal bar. It's being rejected by the EMA, and I expect a test of the lows of this guy because it broke out and it's testing lows. However, it's also a correction leg coming up. So even though it's coming down, if it breaks down below here, I was wondering if it will continue down to test this or it would come up to test this recent high. So this is a confirmation of the second entry short. So as I said, it broke out here. I'm not sure if it's going to come up, test this high, or it's coming down now to test this low. So having that two conflicting ideas, I didn't know which one to follow. I just sat on my hands and I just waited for a confirmation. And the confirmation actually shows up here at the lower high confirmation of the second entry short. So it shows that it attempted to come up and test this high once and it failed, and now it's coming back down. The signal bar is really good, and there is enough room to make it all the way back down to the recent lows, which is way down here. Unfortunately, I didn't take the trade and it went off without me. This is good enough for a scalp. Prices continue moving up. I notice that there's this triple test resistance up here, but no trade because I see a first entry long, second entry long. This is a terrible signal bar. There's technically maybe a channel right here at that point. So I actually had considered things might actually be kind of in a range right here. Prices, I do see a micro range here, breaks out. So then this range really doesn't feel valid anymore because it's just kind of not respecting it. But this one was a resistance up here, comes down. I do see a new low here, first entry long, first entry short, second entry short. I also see potentially a new high here, first entry long, because it actually broke below and came back up. So it's my first entry long, one leg down, comes up, makes a second leg down, and this is a hidden second entry long. I thought it was a good signal bar. It made two clean legs down, but it's set up below the EMA. And I wanted to wait for a higher low confirmation. And ideally, it's set up, above the EMA to give me confidence that this is going to make a second leg up. So it actually flashes up, and I'm thinking it's too late to enter the trade for now. It makes a higher low, I thought here, but then it flashes down and makes a double bottom. So now there is no trade. Continues. You don't really get a higher low till you get to about here, but it feels too far away from the setup because it's first entry long, second entry long. You ideally want the higher low closer, and it's over here. So you could count it as a higher low. Definitely is. This low is higher than the previous ones, but to associate it with this setup felt a little bit like a stretch. So I decided not to take that trade. Prices continue moving up. There's a lot of congestion right here. breaks down. I see one leg down. This is where I take my second trade. I actually saw a new high here. Even though this is technically broke down, came up, I counted this as a localized new high. I saw this as clearly a one leg up. So it's one down, one leg up, first entry long, comes down. And I saw this potentially setting up a second entry long because I like that this is testing this resistance or the support right here. And I had my order ready. It flashed up and it clearly broke and made a second entry long confirmed. I saw the triple test, and as it was dancing around, I dropped my entry right here and I got filled on a limit order, which was enough because I thought there's enough room to get to a scalp before it hit the EMA. That's exactly what happened. Had I had a runner, I would have been able to ride the runner up safely until probably about this candle, and then I would have gotten stopped out. Prices continue moving down. I do see a second entry long visual because I saw one leg down, pulls up, a second leg down, and made this measured move followed by this measured move. And I thought, okay, there's potentially a long here, but I don't like the fact that it is kind of reversing now. It is kind of one leg down, chop, 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 and a second leg down. So this is one leg down here, consolidation, a second leg down. Technically, it made the measured move, so it is ready potentially to bounce back up. And I saw that it was at the midline of this larger pre-market trading range. However, once it violated early on, I wasn't 100% sure this trading range really was in play because this could have been actually higher up here, which would have moved this midline higher up. So I actually just decided, well, this potential second entry long visual, if it was just a little bit more clean and clear, I don't have to do a little bit of interpretation, one leg down, two legs down, I probably would have taken it. Turns out it would have worked out well, at least for a quick scalp. Prices continue. It's consolidating down here. There's clearly a support here, and I thought potentially a top of a trading range here, but it breaks out. So this trading range doesn't really come into play. There is a new low here. Technically, you have a new low here. You get first entry short. You could technically count this as second entry short, but when they're so clumped together, I usually just count this area as the new low. And it's only the first entry short. You technically have a second entry short here, but it's a horrible signal bar. And it fails, but then it just feels too congested to try to take it long as well. It chops within this trading range, goes up this channel. I don't see a good entry. I do see a failed second entry short because technically there's a new low here, moves up. The first entry short pulls back. This is where the second entry short is made, and this is where the failure occurs. Now, the second entry short failure, I needed the signal bar to come down. I counted this as a signal bar. I needed to come down to touch the EMA more definitively, or at least close this gap a little bit more for me to feel safe to take this trade. Also, if it did bounce off and this green candle didn't move up so much, maybe closed here, I would have felt more confident taking the trade because if you waited for this candle to close, then you don't have much room to the recent highs here. Because after this break of this channel, you're thinking it's going to test the extreme. So it's already pretty much on its way there. To take a trade here felt very late. And then to try to enter down here, one tick above here, I didn't really like as well, just because if it moved back enough to hit this, it might decide to actually come back and touch the EMA, because if you one leg down, push up, and second leg down before it tries to test this high. So with all that conflicting information, I decided just to leave this trade alone. Turns out if you did enter one tick above here, I thought it would have been aggressive, but it would have worked out for a quick scalp. Prices continue chopping. Technically, you have a new high here, first entry long. Technically, you have a second entry long right here. This is a decent signal bar. It's bouncing off the EMA. But there's not enough really not enough room here to scalp out to the top because there's a potential trading range here now. I saw that, and when this formed, then I knew there was enough to get a scalp out, but it was already too late because in real time, it's hard for me to really trust that this is going to come up, potentially break through this when it's shown that it acted as kind of support at resistance at one time, support at another time. Who's to say it's going to be support or resistance this next time? Well, it turns out it didn't act as anything. Prices blasted right through it and came back down. So unfortunately, I missed that trade, but that's okay. It just wasn't a clean enough setup. There's a new high, first entry long, and then it makes a second entry long here, and then it makes a second entry long, and it's about to fail. And it fails on this candle, so it actually makes one move up, pulls back, a second move up, and it fails. But then it's a little confusing because it not only does it fail, it comes right back up. So I'm looking for a lower high confirmation to know that this is actually kind of reversing back down. At the time I had this blue trend line trading range in play. And what happened is this actually had an overshoot, came back, made a smaller overshoot. So I thought, okay, maybe there's an actual larger range. This is where the lower high is made. Unfortunately, this lower high with a good signal bar just broke out through the top, this guy of the EMA and this candle here, and it came down. And I was considering this slightly lighter blue range, and it already hit the bottom of the range. So to sell there, I felt I would be selling into the lows. Turns out it would have worked at least for a quick scalp, but again, you don't know that at the time. It turns out to be a trade that works, but not high probability. Then I do have a new low here. First entry short, second entry short is made right here, but you only have one confirmation that this is potentially the high of this range. If it was like a third touch, then I would have considered taking a short to come back down to the EMA. Turns out it would have worked out. Unfortunately, I was not on this trade. You do have a new high here, first entry long, second entry long. The second entry long is kind of in the middle of nowhere because it depends on if you're playing this light blue trading range. You could say it was a bounce with potentially enough room to the top of this trading range. But I also had this orange trading range in play because clearly there's support here and there is, excuse me, clearly there's resistance here and there's support down here because you have one touch, two touch. So this kind of felt like it was in the middle of nowhere. So I decided to leave that alone. Potentially also is running into the top of this pre-market trading range, which again, I wasn't 100% sure was valid anymore because prices had violated it a few times. It stayed outside, dwelled outside, came back in, and now it's coming back to it. So it just told me this isn't a very clean setup. I should stay away. Prices moved up, came down. So I do see a new low here. First entry short, second entry short. There's a horrible signal bar, so I couldn't take this. Also, new high here, first entry long, potentially a second entry long, but then it's kind of a fake out, a little bit of a trap. Prices continue chopping. This is getting close to the end of the day now, so I wasn't too keen on trying to take an aggressive trade. I saw a new high here, first entry long. That's pretty much all you get because it makes a new high up here. You only get a first entry short, second entry short, but it's a terrible signal bar to go short on. And then prices just kind of chopped up and into the close. So overall, it was a kind of a slower day. There weren't too many setups that I could identify and not too many that I felt super confident in. I took two trades. One of them, this first one, in hindsight, don't think I should have taken. It turned out it worked for me, so it was more dumb luck. And then the second trade I felt more confident about. So in theory, if I was a better trader, I probably would have only taken this one trade and potentially a possible lower high short right here. But this one I just kind of lucked out on. I know that I lucked out on it, so I'm going to make sure I study this again after watching some other YouTubers and make sure I don't fall for this trap or this quick anticipation trade. So hopefully that was helpful.